What is up, everybody? Matt Moda here to give you some NFL player prop bangers. We're talking Monday Night Football, Monday, September 30th. We got Seahawks versus Lions. We got Titans versus Dolphins. I'm going to have some plays for these two Monday Night Football games that we have on tap. Technically, we're only backing two individual players, but we're backing them in different ways. Touchdowns, ladder, player props, all that good stuff, which obviously we're going to get into. Now, I'm recording this before all the games on Sunday have finished, so I don't have all of my Sunday NFL stats for you guys. So the way I've been doing these recaps is I'm just doing it after the fact. So you get a full Week 4 recap once Week 4 is over. As for Week 3, it ended up being a pretty good week overall, mostly because of Monday Night Football. Now, we're pretty far past that at this point, and we were able to have a profitable day on Thursday Night Football, which is good. If you just look at the entire season, it's been okay, right? Our early bets, these are all bets against the spread, have been doing pretty well. In the green there are underdogs, which are just teams that we like to win straight up that are not favored. Not so great there. That was mostly off of just last week going 1-2. And then we are in the green on the player props, which is always good. So as for today, as I mentioned, we're going to have a play in each of these Monday Night Football games. And we're just going to get right into it. Starting in the Titans versus Dolphins game, I'm backing Tony Pollard in two different ways. I'm taking him 60 plus rushing yards, which you can get at plus 150 odds, 150 at DraftKings. And I'm also taking him to score a touchdown, which you can get at plus 180 odds, also at DraftKings. And I'm putting a half unit on both of these plays. So I'm backing Tony Pollard for a full unit, half on his rushing, half on his anytime touchdown. Now, I was on Tony Pollard last week, got completely burned. Just a horrific game for Tony Pollard last week. That was not very fun, but he's got another plus matchup tonight. So I'm going back to the well with Pollard. I think that he's going to be able to get the job done after having a gross game last week. It's all because of the matchup, right? That's the most important thing when I'm looking at these player props is we're targeting matchups. And the Titans are playing the Dolphins. Now, we don't know what the Dolphins offense is going to look like, right? Tyler Huntley's coming in. They're now on their third quarterback, which is not very good. Not expecting an offensive explosion for the Dolphins, not like if Tua was playing, which means that this game is projected to be close throughout. Now, I'm not expecting a massive ceiling game for the Titans either, but you can at least run on the Dolphins, right? The run defense has not been very good to start the year. According to DVOA, second worst run defense in the entire NFL. Only the Dallas Cowboys have a worst run defense. In week 1, the Dolphins allowed Tank Bigsby to rush for 73 yards on 12 carries. Now, he's the backup running back. The starter, Travis Etienne, did not have as efficient of a game, but he still went 12 for 44, and he was able to get into the end zone. So he didn't hit his rushing prop, but he scored, while the backup running back was a lot more efficient. Then in week 2, James Cook rushed for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 11 carries. He rushed for 7.1 yards per carry. Easily could have gone over 100, could have gotten 150 in that game if that game was even remotely close, but James Cook basically didn't play the entire second half against the Dolphins. Last week, the Seattle Seahawks, whose rushing game has been just pretty much non-existent without Kenneth Walker, the Seattle Seahawks and Zach Charbonnet, specifically, Zach Charbonnet rushed for 91 yards on 18 carries, 5.1 yards per carry, and he scored 2 touchdowns. And again, Charbonnet had looked just awful, incredibly inefficient leading up to that game, and then he even had a great game against this Dolphins defense. Now, this is not a play. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Titans run offense has been incredibly efficient. I'm not necessarily backing an incredible offense. I just think that they're going to give the majority of the work to Pollard, and I think he is going to have success with that work. Physically, Pollard has looked pretty good, and he looked really good in weeks 1 and 2, not so good last week. But if you just take a step back and look at everything, he's taking 65% of the running back snaps. So there's no 50-50 timeshare going on with Tajay Spears. He's taken about 60% of the rush attempts on the Titans. That's the 10th highest rush attempt percentage in the entire NFL. And that includes quarterback runs as well. So if you just look at running back rush attempts, that number is even higher. He also has a decent target share, not amazing, but a decent target share at 13.8% of all of the targets go to Tony Pollard. That's 8 in terms of running backs, and that's the 3rd highest target share on the Titans. He scored a rushing touchdown in week 1, and then in weeks 1 and 2, he hit his rushing prop. He hit the 60-plus rushing prop. So I think he's got a great opportunity to do both of those things today, which is why I'm backing him to do both. So the anytime touchdown and the 50+ rushing yards I'm taking for Tony Pollard. That's play number 1. Real quick, before I get into play number 2, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are not already. Click that like button, subscribe, and then comment. Let me know your thoughts on these player props. If there are guys that you like that I didn't mention, go ahead and put those in the comments. I love reading through them. As for the next game, Seahawks versus Lions, I'm climbing the full ladder on Jackson Smith-Njigba. I'm taking him over 4.5 receptions, and then I'm taking 6+, 7+, and 8+. All the numbers are detailed on the graphic here if you're curious how I am playing it. If you're not able to physically be able to watch the video, but you're listening to it, I'm putting one full unit on the over 4.5 receptions. I got that at -115 odds at Hard Rock. And then 6+ receptions, I'm playing that for a half unit at +175 odds. For 7+ receptions, I'm putting a quarter unit on that at +270 odds. And then for 8+ receptions, I'm putting, 0.20 units, which for me is $20. I'm putting that on 8+ receptions at +650 odds. A lot of pluses in there. Hopefully you guys got it. Obviously, as you can tell, very in on JSN to have a good game in this one. It's been a weird season to start for him. In week 1, basically uninvolved. He had 2 receptions on 2 targets, just didn't do anything. Then in week 2, completely exploded, 16 targets, catching 12 of them, 12 receptions for 117 yards. You thought, okay, this is the JSN that we were supposed to see when he got drafted in the first round by the Seahawks. Then the following week, which was last week, week 3, another down game, only had 3 receptions on 3 targets. Now, week 1, I generally don't put a ton of stock into stuff that happens in week 1 because week 1 is always wonky. What I like to see is the fact that he didn't do anything in week 1, and then immediately they came out in week 2 and targeted the crap out of him. They came out of that and said, we need to get the ball to Jackson Smith-Njigba more. Immediately was part of the focal point from the jump in week 2. Week 3, we can also be a little bit explained away because the Seahawks offense didn't really need to do anything in that game. Their defense, as I mentioned, or I might have not mentioned it yet, but their defense only allowed 3 points, and that was mostly a ground game for Seattle. So just looking at, again, taking a step back and looking at the season as a whole, Jackson Smith-Njigba gets the second highest target share on the Seahawks, 20.4%, which isn't an amazing number. That's not alpha wide receiver number, but it is the second most on the targets. He's also second most targets on the team, I should say. And he's also run the second most routes on the Seahawks as well. And in terms of the matchup against the Lions, this projects to be a game very, very similar to that week 2 game that we saw, right? The Seahawks were not able to do anything on the ground in week 2, so they threw the ball a ton. That's what I'm expecting in this game. The Lions, it was the same case last year. You cannot run on the Lions. They've allowed the 4th fewest rushing yards in the NFL so far, also the 4th lowest yards per carry in the NFL, but you can pass on them, and they've allowed the highest target share specifically to the slot receiver in the entire NFL. About 45% of the passing targets against the Lions have gone to the slot receiver. Now, admittedly, a lot of that was done by Cooper Kupp in week 1. He just got 1 million targets in week 1. But even in weeks 2 and 3, they have still allowed a decent amount of target share to the slot receiver. That is why I love this matchup for Jackson Smith-Njigba. He, heading into week 4, so taking out Thursday Night Football, heading into week 4, he had run the most routes in the slot in the entire NFL. Now, if you look technically as of right now, the time of this writing, he's run the second most routes in the slot because Wan'Dale Robinson went ahead of him in that Thursday Night Football game. But you look at routes run in the slot per game, he leads. Heading into week 4, not including Thursday Night Football, he also leads the NFL. Jackson Smith-Njigba runs about 85% of his routes in the slot. That's where the Lions defense has been weakest, allowing targets to the slot. JSN, he also has a pretty low ADOT when you compare him, especially when compared to DK Metcalf, which means that he catches a higher percent of his targets as well. So I'm expecting this to be a game in which JSN is just peppered with targets. That's why I like climbing the full ladder all the way up to 8+ receptions. And that's all we got. Technically, we're back in 2 players, but we're backing them in a lot of different ways. For Monday Night Football, Tony Pollard, 60+ rushing yards plus the touchdown. And then for Jackson Smith-Njigba, we're just fully climbing that ladder all the way up to 8+. That's all we got. I appreciate everybody for watching. If you're still here, the last thing I mention in every video is that I do have a dub club where I send all my plays out. It's $5 a month, gets you everything that I'm playing across all sports. So if you're interested, check all that out in the link in the description of the video. Basically, the way it works is as soon as I decide what a play is, the first thing I do is send it out to my dub club so you get it to your phone. So if you want to get plays in before watching the YouTube videos, because sometimes the odds change, or you don't always have time to watch the YouTube videos, that's what the Dub Club is for. If you'd rather not pay $5 a month, that's cool because you can still get everything for free. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. But that's all we got. Appreciate you guys for watching and have a good one.